You're listening to the Superman Super Show, episode number 27, Superman and the Runaway. Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Steven, and 1,000 miles over there to my right is another host, Mr. Ed Moore.
Howdy.
It's been a bit.
A little bit, yeah. Needed a reset, so that's cool.
I've started, of course, you know this, but I've started editing the comic addiction episodes for y'all, and I have to say that it's I enjoy doing that. But as I'm listening to these episodes, as I'm editing them, I have to resist the urge to go on Twitter and leave comments about the episode because it's not up yet. But sometimes I feel like I'm listening to an episode that's been posted and it's like, oh, they did here. They said this. I want to comment on it, but it's not, there's nowhere for me to comment on it. And it makes me a little bit sad.
Oops. Sorry about that.
So yeah. How have you been?
Just doing the same thing as everybody else, just working and, although I have started, a small peu, as they say in France. Is that French? Peu.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys can't see it, but I have the little bit fingers on the camera here. Well, no, you can see it. The podcast people can't see it. Sorry, I get the two confused. Anyways, small exercise regimen, and tomorrow will be a week that I have maintained it. So I guess that's a positive.
Nice. Yeah.
It is very, very high on my list of things I do not like, but it'll be a week tomorrow. So,
yeah, being active is something that I just do not enjoy at all.
Well, no, being active in doing something, I enjoy very much. Being active to be active, I do not like.
It's because like when
that is called work. In my book, and I have one of those, and I apply that for 40 plus hours a week. And I don't, now if we go to a, convention and walk around for 5 hours, okay, that doesn't bother me.
Yep.
But walking on a treadmill to walk on a treadmill, just it eats me up inside.
No thanks. Harold says gym people suck.
I started strength training. Trusty Mutsy, what made you bring up Strangers in Paradise and the RIP? Is this Jamie's anniversary or something like that? We can go on, Stephen Hill.
Could be because of your wife's name made him think of it. Because her name's Terry Moore.
Terry Moore? I love Strangers in Paradise, Mr. Moore. Oh, no, that's my wife, Terry Moore, not like dude Terry Moore. Although I like Strangers in Paradise too. That's why I'm asking. Stupid joke. No, it wasn't stupid. There could be a variety of things going on behind the scenes that I am clueless about. So, but yes, I always go back. Strangers in Paradise I have enjoyed for years, and it was because CGS's Jamie D constantly talked about it. Until finally I was like, okay, I just got to see what the dude is talking about. It can't be that good.
Yeah.
Well, it was pretty close to being that good. And so I always give Jamie D the nod for getting me interested in Strangers in Paradise. Now I have read every Strangers Universe book that Terry Moore has put out. I've read some of his other, here and there, but all of his and I can't think of what he calls his universe, but the SIP universe. Read all their books. They even have one going now, Parker Girls.
I was in the same thing. Jamie D talked about it all the time on CGS, and I remember I checked it out. I just really could never get access to a lot of the trades because I didn't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So one of these days, I'm going to have to go into Comixology and just see what I can
if they have it, or just watch and get them when they're on sale, because they now have it. All of the Strangers in Paradise and like big books, so you would buy like 4 of them maybe, and be able to get everything, something like that. So you never mentioned Superman. No, we'll do it.
Trusty Musty, for those of you listening to the show, has just announced to us that his goal is to make sure we never mention Superman once. He's going to keep us so off topic tonight. Not going to happen, Buster.
Is to help
Buster
us
Brown
swerve in our glory.
That's right.
Isn't that right, Terry? She'll recognize what that is.
Speaking of which, so today we're looking at Superman and the Runaway. This appeared in Superman issue number 3 from 1939. We'll get into dates here in a minute, but I do want to mention that issue number 3 has 4 stories in it, and we always try to just stick with 1 story per episode. But I wanted to mention this because Superman and the Runaway is one of the stories which we're talking about here on episode 27. There are 2 stories in the issue, though, Superman and the Dam and Superman's Phony Manager. Those were both reprints. Superman and the Dam was from Action Comics number 5. And we actually talked about that on the Superman Super Show episode 5 from back on May 16th. Superman's Phony Manager was from Action Comics number 6. And we talked about that on the Super Show on episode 6 from May 23rd. And then the 4th story in the book is Superman and the Jewel Smugglers, and we'll be talking about that in the next episode.
Cool beans.
So I just want to make sure everybody was aware. So Superman and the Runaway was written by Jerry Siegel, pencils by Joe Shuster, and the inks were by Dennis Neville. You know what? I don't think we have to keep saying that Superman was published by DC Comics. I don't think we need to say that anymore. I think that's pretty well established. But it had a cover date on the book of winter 1939, and according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, an on-sale date of November 15th, 1939. I noticed today when I was putting all these show notes together that like when I looked at this particular issue on Mike's Amazing World of Comics, which was a website that I am so happy you introduced me to, Ed, because I love that website so much. Can
you imagine the amount of work that he has put into that thing?
He is
to be the resource that it is. It's just
he's a hero. But for a lot of these issues, when we talk about a lot of these issues, he would have listed approximate on sale date. Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed this one had on sale date, and I checked a couple of the others that we're going to talk about tonight as we're recording multiple episodes. And I noticed that some of them say on sale date and some of them say approximate on sale date. So I am now specifying in the notes. So if it says on sale date, that's what it says on the website. If it says approximate sale date, that's what it says on the website. So
cool beans.
So I'm going to give the synopsis from DCFandom.com, and y'all need to hold on to your lunch because this will be the longest synopsis I think we've ever done. This is freaking long.
If you want 1, 2, 3, 4. After you get done with 4 of the paragraphs, I'll take over and finish it out.
Okay. So you'll start with the night Clark changes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Let me see if
la 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 la. No. Well, you sang some, but you were drum, right? So you need to loosen up those wrists for this.
Yeah, I wasn't, and actually, it's funny because when you were talking earlier about exercising for exercising's sake, or being active just because you're supposed to, when I was a drummer, we would get together and practice 3 nights a week for like 2 hours, and that was the best exercise I ever got.
Yep.
And I've always been a big man, but I really didn't start packing on a lot of the weight until after I stopped playing drums. And
for your chosen style of music, drumming is rigorous. So, it's not like quiet cafe jazz.
Yeah, and I was never a subtle type of player. I never.
Oh, okay. Well, then, there you
I
go.
never had the kind of control where I could just ding, ding, ding. I just boom, 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 and went through a lot of sticks, a lot of drum heads, and a lot of cymbals. It's an expensive instrument to play.
It can be
very expensive. All right, so here's what happened in the issue or in the story. While walking to work Clark spots a small boy passed out on the railroad tracks, and a train was incoming. Quickly changing to his Superman duds, he runs out, speeding past the train, scoops the boy up, and leaps them to safety. Before the kid regains consciousness, Superman returns to his civilian identity of Clark Kent. The boy's name was Frankie Dennis, a ward of the state orphanage until he ran away. He tells Clark it's because Superintendent Lyman treats them like slaves, feeding them leftovers and hiring them out to forced labor. Frankie himself has been beaten and forced to scrub the floors several times. Clark wishes to help Frankie make things better for him and the other kids at the orphanage. If Frankie goes back to the orphanage, he can act as Clark's inside man, letting him know what kind of bad things were happening. After some thought, the boy agrees to return if it would help the others. Clark and Frankie stand at the entrance to the state orphanage as Frankie nervously knocks on the door. Superintendent Lyman opens the door, and once he sees Frankie, he begins yelling at him for running away, grabbing him by the arm. But when he sees Clark, he lets the boy go and immediately switches to a friendly demeanor. Lyman thanks him for finding Frankie, who he was worried sick about. Clark is told he can come back anytime for a visit before retreating with Frankie back inside and closing the door. The man's suspicious behavior puts Clark on high alert, and he certainly does intend on visiting again very soon. Later, back at the Daily Star, Clark asks Lois out for lunch, only to be rebuffed, just like always. George Taylor calls him into his office and gives Kent an assignment to investigate the orphanage, which is very serendipitous, I found. Taylor heard about how Superman saved a runaway's life and wanted to find out more. Clark accepts, suggesting Lois also comes along to help out. When Clark and Lois arrive back at the orphanage, they find out they were followed by 2 reporters from a rival paper trying to scoop them. Superintendent Lyman answers the door after a few minutes, happily inviting Clark and the others inside to look around. On the surface, everything seems normal. Normal is what I said. On the surface, everything seems normal. The children are happily playing in the yard, but a little girl who seems to be lying about where she got her bruised arm and a kid who was too exhausted to get out of bed piques Clark's suspicions. Frankie tries to tell Clark something, but Lyman's sudden appearance causes him to clam up. Eventually, Clark and Lois have no choice but to leave empty-handed with nothing but a seemingly ordinary children's orphanage to show for their time. After the reporters leave, Lyman turns on Frankie and punishes him for almost squealing by locking him in the attic. The other children are told to go back to work or else.
That night, Clark changes to Superman and leaves off to get another look at the orphanage, not believing the superintendent's good guy act for a second. In her apartment, Lois gets the same idea, worried for the child's safety after the hints of abuse she thought she saw. Unaware of each other's presence, Superman and Lois arrive at the orphanage in the dead of night. Lois stealthily sneaks in through a window while Superman peers through Lyman's office window to spy on him reading over his secret account book. Upstairs in the attic, Frankie begins making a lot of noise by smashing things until they let him out. Lyman irritably goes up to give the boy a piece of his mind, allowing Superman the chance to go in and look over the accounts. The entries written for the price of food were abnormally high. Superman takes off for the grocery company, and that's capital letters, grocery company, to do some comparing. Just as he suspected, the prices in Lyman's account book were raised to cover his grafting scheme. Lois, meanwhile, creeps down the hallway following the sound of pained cries coming from the attic. She opens the door to find Lyman whipping young Frankie. She threatens to print Lyman's abuse of the children. In response, the superintendent locks her in the attic with Frankie and begins packing up all the money he's gathered. To make sure Lois never tells a soul, he pours a trail of gasoline across the hall leading to the attic door and ignites it with a match. Superman returns to the orphanage in time to see it in flames and Lyman fleeing the scene. Superman grabs the car and pulls Lyman out, applying a light tap to the back of his head to knock him out. While most of the kids have escaped the fire, a cry for help from inside the building brings Superman to the attic window where he sees Frankie and an unconscious Lois Lane. He carries them both to safety just as the police start to show up. Leaving the area to change, Superman returns as Clark Kent, telling the police that it was Lyman who set the fire. The screaming superintendent is arrested for attempted murder and grafting. Days later, Clark visits the orphanage to find conditions have dramatically improved. Excuse me. Frankie reports that everybody is happier now with the new superintendent. And the reason I'm laughing is because I saw the next line. Ed, what did you think?
Ed, what did you think?
I thought that this was a long story to be in Superman. The book wasn't evenly divided this time.
No, it was not. It was the longest of the 4 stories.
Yeah, by like a third or almost half of some of the other stories in page number, which is fine. I don't, that doesn't bother me or anything. It's just something I noticed. Something I should have mentioned at the top. This story is adapted from the Daily Strip for the dates of June 12th, 1939 through July 22nd, 1939. So that story is what became this in.
I should have known that. We talked about this the last time they did that, because the one thing I noticed about this story compared to the rest of them, it looks a lot better than the rest of them. And
I also think that this really had a movie scripty feel to it. I mean, I could see a lot of these scenes as stills from a movie as I was reading through it. It really felt like that.
Well, it's fun. It's funny. I took a bunch of notes when I was reading it, and one of my very last notes, since you brought that up, is that I wanted to. Oh, nope, that's the wrong book. Goodness gracious.
Wrong note. Cards
are out of order. They're not out of order. Not at all. I wanted to shout out the Superman Radio Revisited podcast.
Okay.
I've been listening to that a bit lately. And because of listening to that show and listening to the old Superman radio serials, it was this story more than the other 4 I read today, but this story more than the other 4. As I'm reading it, I hear it in my head as if it was one of the radio serials. I could totally hear that in my head.
Yeah. And I think both of our other media thoughts probably have to do with how long it was, gave it more time to breathe and more time to fill in the quote unquote dead spaces normally in the story. So but you're absolutely right. It very much felt like a script for, I said movie, you said radio. Yeah. Hell, we'll go ahead and throw out TV show too and just get them all,
Stage play.
Yeah. Oh, the musical. No. Yeah. No, not a musical. No. What did I think? I enjoyed it. I liked it. Had a little bit different feel than some of his other stories recently have had. And reading this and actually reading all 4 of the stories for tonight, I'm getting to a point where I think I enjoy the Golden Age stories a little bit more than I did when I first started.
Me too.
I don't know if it's used to them. That's probably part of it, but it just I'm appreciating the style more as I have been doing this. Because other books typically that I will read will be very, very contemporary books, and so it gives me a break from a lot of the problems that I'm personally having with a lot of modern material. I can go to this stuff, and it's just I enjoy it.
And for those of you listening to the audio podcast, we've mentioned a couple of times so far that, if you're listening to this for the first time, we mentioned a couple of times all the stories we've read for tonight. I feel like I got to clarify this every once in a while, not every episode, but Ed and I get together. We try to get together once every few weeks, and we record multiple episodes at once. And so we read the two stories from Superman 3 for tonight, and then Action Comics 20 and 21.
Yeah, and I apologize if I were a good host, I wouldn't mention that because it's opening the curtain, and
Curtain needs to be opened every once in a while.
But it does get kind of,
Not my curtain.
Yeah.
Trusty Mutsy says, it's so hard to get into modern books. I'm reading nothing but Marvel Epic collections of classic stuff. And I agree. We've talked about it before. I have both the Marvel Unlimited app and the DC Infinite Universe app, and I read mostly old books on the Marvel app. For some reason, I'm enjoying the new DC stuff, but I cannot get into the new Marvel stuff at all. I don't know why. I cannot get into it.
The newer Marvel and DC stuff, I feel, as you do about the new Marvel, to really get out of that funk, I have to go out of the big two.
Yeah.
And I can read a lot of contemporary stuff outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't affect me quite like just this feeling I get with, and I'm probably like you, but it just, unfortunately, I read far more contemporary Marvel than I do DC. So I really can't compare them a whole lot. But this past weekend, the whole weekend, the only things I read were quote unquote indie stuff, contemporary books. And but we are talking about Superman. So
yes.
You're not going to win, Trusty Mutsy. We're talking about
that's
Superman.
right.
We're bringing it back. To bring it back on track. All right.
So I made some notes. Okay. I think because this story was longer than the rest of them, I have more notes for this one than anything else.
All right, let's go. What you got?
All right. So kind of going through the issue, the second page, I just found it funny that when faced with a small child passed out on railroad tracks and a train bearing down on it, that Clark takes a moment to change into his Superman outfit.
Okay.
Now, nowadays, that wouldn't be any problem because we know that it just takes him like a fraction of a second to do it.
A thought. That's
I've never gotten that impression with these Golden Age stories. And in fact, I've talked about it before, the various panels that they've shown in past stories where he's literally sitting on a chair in his apartment building, lacing up his boots, buckling his belt and stuff like that. So while he's saying not an instant to lose, he's changing into his Superman outfit. I thought that was funny for some reason.
I find it necessary to disparage the art. This first panel where we see the young boy in the train, it is far closer, the train, than the three panels that we see Superman running after there is no way. The kid is squished and the train has gone on by the time Superman gets there. So
and the kid, let's talk about the kid real quick. I mean, good Lord, very Golden Age child looking, with just the dots for the eyes, very Orphan Annie kind of look to this kid. I also wrote down when we meet Superintendent Lyman, Lyman equals lying man. I don't think they were trying to be clever there.
You don't know.
They might have thought they were getting away with something.
When Superman jumps after having grabbed up the boy, why does he turn and face the train and jump over the train rather than just jumping to the side?
I don't know.
He wouldn't even have to just hop to the side to get off the track. That's all. But no, he's like, oh, yeah. And he faces the train and hurdles the engine straight on. I'm like,
that was funny.
You got to do it the hard way, man.
I think it's this. Maybe it's not this story. One of the stories coming up that we'll be talking about tonight, they really bear down on the whole Clark leaps about instead of flying because there were so many panels in one of the stories of him just leaping, like that panel where he's jumping over the train, one arm out, both of his legs, spread open as he's leaping. And it's just, they just look so silly, seeing him do that with like a cityscape underneath him.
Allow me to take a moment and welcome birthday boy Chris Parton into the chat
in the house. That's right. It is his birthday. I did wish him happy birthday on Facebook.
It is his B-day, not bidet, but B-day. Never mind, birthday. Yeah, no, it's sorry about that, Chris.
Though a bidet would be a good thing.
That was pretty shitty of me.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Sorry. It's Okay, Trusty is winning because I'm going off the tracks here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
You are off the rails tonight.
Wow. Okay, so
all right,
are we up to where we first met Lyman, or because
I'm kind of
okay? He's several pages past our
yeah.
friend here.
I just made
the boy.
various notes as I was reading.
That's fine.
So
okay, so here's Lying Man. Not to be confused with Running Man. That's a dance. So this is
Lying Man. It's just a guy who lies there in the road.
Right.
He's just laying there. He's the opposite of the Running Man.
Trusty, no, I am not. I have the strip. I have I think the first book of the strips, but I have not cracked it open to read along with this yet. I've read some of it, but no, I have just been, and I think it's because of my fear of Golden Age books. I don't want to burn out knowing that this is something that I'm wanting to do. So I'm not getting really, really steeped. I'm trying to make it a point to not read any other Golden Age stuff either, so that I don't get worn out on it. It could change. Like I said, I'm kind of really enjoying this Golden Age stuff more and more. So I might add a book or two here. I briefly this evening went down a Spectre rabbit hole for a reason in one of the books that came up. But
yeah, and we're both of us are actually reading from the Superman and the Golden Age collected volumes.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, tonight we're finishing volume 1 and starting volume 2. So
right. Yep.
Volume 1 ends with Superman number 3, and then Volume 2 begins with Action Comics 20.
All right, so we're up to where Clark and Lyman met here. What else you got? What else did you know?
My notes shoot ahead to when we go to the Daily Star and we get another Red Banner Lois Lane moment where Clark asks her out. How about having some lunch with me today, Lois? Sorry, not interested. Aw, come on. I'm not Poison Ivy. And then first of all, the look on her face as she's looking at him, and she just says, for once and all, will you please let it register in that thick dome of yours that I dislike you heartily? Understand? And it's really funny.
It's harsh. And this is a similar tune, but then a complete flip-flop in one of the later stories. So it actually, she gets a little harsher in that story, and then complete 180 on him.
Yep. My next note, I jump again. I did enjoy these scenes here with the other two reporters trying to follow Lois and Clark, and then them trying to lose him in the cab.
Right. Okay.
We're being followed. Shake off the taxi behind us, and there's a 5 spot in it for you. Leave it to me.
Yeah.
And of course, they don't.
No. They don't shake anybody.
Yeah, Lyman's not a good guy. Threatens to, harm the children if they don't pretend like they're playing and having a good time.
Right.
When the reporters arrive. But my notes skipped ahead to later on that evening after they leave the orphanage and Superman goes back. Okay. And we get one of those moments where he jumps onto a window ledge. There's no hanging from window ledges in this.
Right. No
story.
Hanging. Which Trusty, and I don't know, maybe Chris, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we started keeping count of the number of times that Superman hung from a ledge. We're up to 10, with perhaps that number increasing later on this evening. Perhaps.
I think it will.
We'll have to discuss to be sure. But yes, we're up to 10 times in, I don't know, about, well, what are we on? 27? On 27 appearances, he has hung from a ledge 10 times.
He one of his modus operandi is to leap up on a window, hang from the window ledge, and spy on people inside. That's what Superman does. Now he's doing that here. He's spying on this Lyman, but he's actually standing on the ledge this time. And the note that I made was how lucky Clark is, Superman, as he's spying on Lyman. Lyman is basically confessing to all his crimes out loud to nobody.
Right. Yeah.
What those reporters wouldn't give to see this secret account book. It's just, Superman might not have looked at that account book had he not said that out loud.
And between that panel and the next one, I think Lyman rearranges the furniture in his office there. It
Yes,
looks
he
like
does.
for one, he is sideways to the window, and then in the next panel, the window is behind him,
Right behind him, yeah.
or so that Superman can actually look over his shoulder.
Yeah,
he's got X-ray vision. I mean, he doesn't, but that's how it's drawn.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Superman the Creeper. Yeah, that Superman gets more information right now that way than anybody, except maybe Batman.
Yeah.
You know, he's always listening in the closet or listening through the window yeah.
Yeah, it's just so funny, you know, when you see stuff like that, and you can't help but think of the Superman of today.
Right. Yeah.
He wouldn't do stuff like that now, and
he doesn't need to.
He doesn't need to nowadays. Yeah,
he can be over Europe, and he can hear what Lyman is saying. We understand now that's how it works. So it's
he flies up far enough to see the curvature of the Earth, and then just listens to see what's going on in the world.
Yep.
Yep. I was also confused about Frankie suddenly not understanding where he was, because he was fully awake when Lyman locked him in that attic. And then, but then suddenly he's just like, where am I? And then he starts freaking out, which I love him for. Oh, let me out or I'll wreck the place. And he starts smacking that chair against the wall.
And he starts wrecking the place. He's a kid of his word. So
he's not messing around. He says he's going to do something. He's going to do it.
Yep.
I loved. Oh well, here's a number of panels where he's leaping out the window with the book tucked under his arm.
Yeah, looks like he's running.
Yeah, it does. It looks like he's running in these great long strides in midair. That's why it's so funny looking. Lyman starts whipping young Frankie, which isn't cool.
With a whip.
With a literal whip.
You know, I got whipped when I was little, but not with a whip. So, not little. When I was younger, I should say.
Yeah, my mom had a yardstick that she threatened us with. I don't think she ever actually hit us with it. But then Lyman, when he's discovered by Lois, he of course sets fire to the orphanage. And we have this wonderful panel after he's dumped a bunch of gas in the hallway, and he's throwing the match onto the gas, and it says, "Laughing with mad glee, the crazed superintendent sets fire to the orphanage."
Yep.
But I think my favorite Superman moment in this story was when Superman catches up to him in the car, picks the car up, and just rips the back wheels off of it.
Yep.
It's like, that's it. Done. You're done.
I picture him just like plunking the guy, flipping him in the back of the head to knock him out. It just.
But it's when he knocks him out, the synopsis says that he taps him, but in the story it says that he applies a light pressure upon the rear of Lyman's neck.
Gives him a Spock pinch.
That's
Spock's pinch.
That's exactly what I wrote in my notes. That Superman knows the Vulcan nerve pinch.
Yeah, it's before the Vulcans even. Well, before the Vulcans showed us. Of course, the Vulcans are older, but So,
but my favorite moment in this entire story is when the cops show up and they grab Lyman, and he says, "Let me go. I didn't know what I was doing."
Good defense.
Yeah, he's already pleading insanity.
Ignorance of the law, I think, is what that would qualify as.
Yeah. I didn't realize that burning an orphanage full of children was the wrong thing to do.
Right.
Good stuff. That's all I had.
Okay. I don't think I really have anything else to add. I think you grabbed on most of the highlights. You're right about the art, though. It is. I don't necessarily know that I would use the word better. I think that's what you said. It was better, but it is different.
It's bright. I don't want to say brighter either. It's less. I don't know.
It is different. I mean, and I would really have to sit and compare and flip pages back and forth and do all that to really try to come up with the words as to why it's different. First of all, the feeling of the artwork is different. It has a different feel to it. And that is probably because structurally there is something different. Now, what that is, I'm not sure. But
well, I mean, if you look at the stories in Action Comics, where they're literally writing for a comic book format, they have those 2 rows or 2 columns of wide panels basically on every page. And because this is, I didn't realize until you said it that this was adapted from the newspaper strip. We have more square panels and taller panels, and it's mixed up a bit more.
Different shapes and yeah.
And the shading, I will say, because if I jump over to the next story, I don't know if it's because maybe they kept better care of the newspaper strips as far as archiving them, and so they had a better product to use when they were reprinting these, here within the last 10 or 20 years. But if you go to like the next story, which we'll talk about in the next episode, a lot of the shading, a lot of the backgrounds and the it's very, to me, I would think that this, I don't know. It's of course, this was probably taken from a newspaper strip as well.
Actually, yes. Now that you say that, I peek here at my notes, and yes, both of the Supermans were this issue. I thought they had gotten out of that, but I guess not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, because we know that at this point, this is the 3rd Superman of the year, and they weren't doing them monthly at this point. Mm-mm. And I think it's just more of a, hey, kind of like what trade paperbacks are for us now, They were doing them like quarterly, I think, at this point, roughly? I think so, yeah.
Roughly every 3 months.
Seasonally. Because I think the last one was, well, the first one, of course, Superman #1 didn't have anything on it. Wasn't a #1.
Wasn't a #1, yeah. It was just...
I think the second one said fall 1939, and then this one was winter 1939. So
okay,
all right. I don't want to move on to the next episode until we talk real quick. I want to go ahead and include this in this episode. The 1-page little attaining super health, a few hints from Superman.
Okay.
Which doesn't look like it survived the reproduction process very well. But we got, in some of those Action Comics, the earlier ones, not that we're that far into Action Comics, but we're in the second year, near the end of the second year at this point. But, they had a lot of those, how you can be super strong and how you can leap far and stuff like that.
Right.
This kind of reminds me of that, but it's a whole page of, basically exercising and how you should do it every day and don't give up. And then to really show young boys why they need to exercise, the one panel where the 2 girls are looking at the 2 boys walking by, and one of them says, "I don't like Johnny. Look how terrible he slouches when he walks." And the other girl says, "Larry strides so straight and manly. I think he's wonderful." So if you want to get the ladies, you got to exercise.
Don't slouch.
Stand up straight and be manly like Superman.
Who also makes an appearance in the very last panel.
Right,
so there is your example. If you're not quite sure what they're working towards, you have, he's got kind of he's not straight on with the panel. He's slanted a little bit, but nice bust shot of Superman.
Squinty eyes. Mental health is inextricably linked with physical health. Always do the right and just thing. Always do the right and just thing. Help others. Keep your conscience clear. That's super living.
As pronounced by the Super Boy Scout with his twisted lock of hair in the middle.
Always teaching us the right way to live, Superman. All right. Yeah, we don't have anything else. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Superman Super Show. If you want to drop us a line, ask us a question, or just provide feedback in general, you can send an email to thesupermansupershow@gmail.com. You can also find us over on Twitter under the handle @SoupsSuperShow, or just come join in on all the fun over at the forum at forum.justanotherfanboy.com. supermansupershow.com. All those links will be in the show notes. And so until next week, folks, I'm Steven. That's Ed. And this was the Superman Super Show. Bye.
Ciao, Bella.
Superman is a copyrighted feature appearing in Action Comics magazine.